Good afternoon. Well, the other video I made talking about electric cars, that's gone down quite well. There's been a lot of people brought a lot of very valid points up and asked a lot of important questions and that. Now, I've never had an electric car of my own. I have driven a Toyota Prius in the past, and that was different to an electric car. It was you started the engine, and it was more of a generator than an engine. And once the battery had reached a certain amount of power, the engine or the generator stopped, and you're going along in silence, thinking, "Whoa, this is weird." And they were really good. There was a lot of people criticised them because they cost a lot to produce or something, and the pollution involved in making one. But I mean, the idea is there. It's going down the right path for sure, and I'm all in favour of electric cars when they work properly. And you've got all these people shouting about, oh, they've got Teslas and they've got their own plug-in socket in their garage. Well, it's all very well for people who have got their own plug-in socket and their own garage, but a lot of the time you can't even park outside your own house. I mean, me and the missus used to live in Brighton. You'd be lucky if you could park in the same street, let alone outside your house. So these are all issues that need to be addressed when we're looking at electric cars. And the biggest problem I can see with electric cars is the battery. Now, in the old days, we had those big lead acid batteries, didn't we? And in 1911, I think it was, they had electric cars, believe it or not, on the old veteran cars that go from London to Brighton on these rallies. And they had lead acid batteries underneath the seats, and they could go all the way from London to Brighton, believe it or not. But by the time they got to Brighton, they were flat, and they'd take ages to charge back up. So you couldn't really do it in a day and back without a charging station. Anyway, electric cars just went away, and petrol came along, and petrol engines came along. But batteries have not really evolved. They've had lead acid batteries. They've still got lead acid batteries in cars today. But along came the new NiCad batteries, these ones they put in laptops and stuff like this, and they're the ones that got in electric cars. And they're not a good battery. I mean, they work, but they're heavy. Batteries are always going to be heavy. Can't get away from that. But it was not until I realised, I saw an episode of Bear Grylls. Remember Bear Grylls? He's the guy who parachutes into the desert and then survives, by the way, and teaches you all these kind of how to find water and how to find food and how to eat a live wasp and things like this, and putting all disgusting creatures in his mouth and crunching them up. Well, I'm sure you know who Bear Grylls is. Anyway, he pulled out this mobile phone and he said, well, look, if you're lost, you're out in the desert, you've got no signal and your battery's gone flat, so your phone is useless, only at the point where it's useless. He said, and there's nothing else around, you can start a fire. And I thought, really? Anyway, he took the back off the battery, and he took out the phone battery, threw the phone away. Okay, so he's just got the battery now, NiCad battery, and he got his knife out, his Bear Grylls special knife, and he stabbed it and twisted it like this and bent it, and as soon as the air makes contact with the chemicals that are in it, it ignites, it bursts into flames. So you can start a fire, okay, with your phone battery in an emergency survival situation. And obviously you can't put it out. It will not go out because it's burning. Okay, I've had flares, on the boats that you pull, and they're there burning away, giving off smoke and that. And I've thrown them in the sea, and the sea's been about, 10, 15 foot deep. And I've watched this flare go to the bottom and sit on the bottom, and it's still burning underwater. So there's no way you're going to put that out, and it's going to burn itself out, and it won't go out until it goes out. You can't put it out. And this is the problem we've got with these e-scooters and the electric cars. They've got the same batteries, from what I understand, which are a fire hazard. And the faster you charge them up, the hotter they're going to get, and the more likely they are to burst into flames. Now, people have burnt to death in these cars, the Teslas and things like this. There've been a few nasty incidents with the batteries. Now, this is the issue. People have had e-scooters in the house and they've had them on charge, and maybe they've left them on charge too long. Something there's been the batteries have got hot, burst into flames, and you can't put them out. You can't throw them off the balcony because you might kill someone down below, and that wouldn't be clever, would it? So I mean, they've set fire to people's houses, So you might have your car and your battery and your plug in your house, but it might set fire to the garage and burn your house down, So this is an issue. Now, I know that's a bit of a long shot. I mean, generally speaking, most e-scooters and electric cars do not just burst into flames, but it is a hazard, it is a possibility. And unlike petrol engines, you see, the fire brigade can smother a petrol fire with a blanket of foam and that'll put the fire out, but you can't put these things out. You can't. I've made some notes here. Yeah, they're heavy. Batteries are heavy. If you fill your car with petrol, the further you go and the less and less fuel you've got in the tank, the car's actually getting lighter all the time, isn't it? But the battery isn't going to get lighter at any point. It's going to stay the same weight whether it's fully charged or whether it's empty, which is another problem for electric aeroplanes, isn't it? Because at aeroplanes, as the fuel tanks drain away, they get lighter and they're easier to fly and things, but they'll never get any lighter, no matter how much the battery is depleted with its power. And someone else mentioned that they don't last long in the cold, the battery on a full charge. Now, I know for a fact, because I've got a GoPro camera and I've put it out on aeroplanes, and I've put it outside the cockpit filming in the wind chill factor, all this, and batteries just died. Didn't last 5 minutes. And you think, well, that's obviously because of the cold, not because the battery's defective, it's just the cold affecting it. And someone mentioned they've got electric cars in Iceland, and I was wondering how the batteries are affected by the cold. I guess some batteries are and some batteries aren't. I suppose it depends on insulation levels, things like that. I don't know. But fast charge, I think, could and definitely would increase the risk of fire, especially if you've got a defective cell in those batteries. I mean, I had an e-scooter. Incidentally, I've got another e-scooter coming. Should be arrived next week on Amazon. But I had an older e-scooter, and the kids got one each as well, and it was a cheapie. It's a cheapie from the local supermarket, Carrefour. And within 6 months, all 3 bikes were dead. The batteries had died, and they've got like 1-volt batteries, and there's like 32 of these batteries in a pack, all taped together with a, and they go in. And so there's nothing wrong with the scooters. The scooters, they're still in the house, under the bed, I think. But they just became defective. The batteries were the big problem on these vehicles, and they're really expensive. That's if they do a replacement. So you buy yourself an e-car, electric car, and you have a problem with the battery. They're going to be very, very expensive if anyone can change them for you. So these are all. You could say the same of your industrial, normal combustion engine. The engine blows up. That's going to be expensive to replace, but your engine's not going to blow up unless you abuse it. If you never check the oil in the water and you thrash it everywhere, then engine's going to die. But if you look after it, you know what to do to make sure it doesn't die. Now, going back to the Toyota Prius, which had a generator on board, they were great. They did have a petrol engine, but as your battery got lower and lower and lower, because we talked about recharging problems and waits and delays and waiting for the wire, but the Prius, when the battery got low, the petrol generator would kick in, and it would be charging the battery, and it would be producing the power to drive the motors, so you could continue along. So you weren't fully on electric, so you were burning some fossil fuel, but you were certainly burning a lot less. So I think that is a good idea, to have a petrol generator on board for that eventuality, so you could just pull up and put petrol in it again and carry on. And obviously once your battery's fully charged, the engine will cut out and you just carry on electric. And someone else mentioned hydrogen cell. Hydrogen cells are a brilliant idea. I thought of it years ago. In theory, it's running on water, H2O, 2 parts hydrogen and 1 part oxygen. Hydrogen is highly flammable, and so is oxygen, and they need both to burn. So theoretically, if you put a match to water, it should ignite. It should be highly volatile, but it's not. You have to separate the molecules into gas, and when you put 2 electrodes into water and pass a current through it, you get bubbles coming off the electrodes. The bubbles coming off one electrode, I can't remember which way around it is, but the bubbles coming off one is oxygen, bubbles coming off the other is hydrogen. So you can actually produce hydrogen from water, and there's an abundance of water on the planet. So it's a fuel that really is economical if you can find a processing way of doing it cheaply. I mean, the big airships, they were full of hydrogen, weren't they? They must have took an enormous amount of hydrogen to fill those things, but hydrogen's lighter than air gas, so they filled these airships with hydrogen, and away they went, the Graf Zeppelin and stuff like that, and it was really good. It was really, really good, apart from the fact they could explode in a fireball and everyone could be killed because it's very volatile. So with that thought in mind, if you're putting it in an engine, hydrogen cell cars are probably the way to go, but unless they can sort the batteries out on the electric cars, I think that's a much, much better idea. Or a hydrogen cell generator for the electric car. I think that's a genius idea. I'm hoping that comes on. And so, yeah, there's just a few more thoughts of mine. And like I said, I hope my e-scooter is okay. I've bought the more expensive version of it. So hopefully the battery will last longer than 6 months. And now when it comes, I will be whizzing off and doing loads of videos all over the place, hopefully. So that's something for next week. Thanks for watching. And comments below, please, because you guys do come out with really, really clever stuff that I make notes of, and then I'll come back with some answers later. Thanks very much. Don't forget, comments down below.